The presentation is entitled Marikana and the Politics of Equality. And what I am trying to do is take seriously the claim by many of the striking workers at Marikana that they wanted to represent themselves, that they did not seek a kind of political arrangement that would have one or another trade union speak on their behalf to mine owners and employers or to the state, but rather that they wanted to speak on their own behalves for themselves directly to employers, the mine workers, and ultimately the state. What I'm arguing in this paper is that if we take that starting point seriously, we have to rethink a lot about how we conceptualize South African politics today. And in essence, what I am suggesting is that most forms of politics in South Africa presume the inequality of the poor and the majority of South Africa's population. They presume they are not capable of representing themselves or not capable of understanding the political arrangements that structure society, and that they either need to be educated in proper behavior or need to be represented so that their claims can be meaningfully engaged with. If we don't accept that presumption and presume instead that the poor, the working classes, and the majority of South Africans are perfectly capable of understanding their own experiences and perfectly capable of representing their own experiences, then we need to call into question many of the ways in which democracy is structured today. I don't think that organized labor is about to vanish, but I think we need to rethink how organized labor operates and how organized labor engages with the poor and the working classes. In Marikana, what we see is a group of striking workers rejecting labor representation as a principle, rather than either go through the unions that they belong to or to move from one union to an alternate union. They chose to step outside of the systems of representation and to make demands and make claims for themselves. What we see after Marikana is multiple forms of the re-establishment of order. Now, one of the most obvious ways in which this took place was through the brutal police violence of the 16th of August, which sought to shatter the possibilities of insurgent political practices on the part of the miners. But another way in which the potential politics of that group were disturbed or disrupted or refolded back into the political order was through the successes, ironically, of the unions. And the trade union AMCU, the Association of Mining and Construction Workers Union, in gathering up the various dissenting groups that had formed the strike after the massacre, shows how trade unions and organized labor can still act to restore the social order and still act within the organized framework of politics as effective bargaining tools. But there is a consequence. And the consequence is that for those unions to operate, for those unions to be effective, the disruptive potential or the exciting possibilities that come out of the politics of workers organizing themselves gets lost. This conference was jointly organized by SERI, the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, and the History Workshop at the University of the Witwatersrand. SERI was, of course, involved with the families of the miners at the Commission and with AMCU, the union itself. The WITS History Workshop has a long history of engaging with public events and public history in South Africa. Perhaps the most famous precedent for this comes 15 years ago, in which the History Workshop organized a conference called Commissioning the Past, which focused on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and its legacies. We see this conference, Commissioning the Present, a way to continue a set of important public and intellectual conversations that come to the state of politics in South Africa, the role of violence in South African politics, the role of inequality, of labor, and of popular uprisings, at the same time as trying to understand how certain structures of the state, particularly judicial commissions of inquiry, are shaping popular history, political practice, and this moment that we call the present.